hot to the touch. Picking up immediately where the last episode left off, Finn declares his crush for the Flame Princess, saying she's not evil, as her father says, but simply misunderstood. So he and Jake follow the trail of fire she's left to a forest where Finn declares that he likes her to her face. This causes her flames to grow more intense, though when Finn tries to put them out, she cries in pain and runs off. Finn chases her down, freaking the princess out as she declares she is going to start her own flame kingdom on the site of the Goblin Kingdom. Unable to get close without getting burned, Finn and Jake prepare to make fireproof suits with the help of Nepter, who's been hiding as part of a game of hide-and-seek for the last few seasons. Finn takes his Nepter suit out to talk to the Flame Princess and talk her out of destroying the Goblin Kingdom, but Jake and Nepter's attempts to put out some of the flames only hurt her. This makes the Flame Princess go into a frenzy that Finn's unable to stop. He begins to cry over the fact that his romantic endeavors have hurt so many people, but the tears that extinguish Flame Princess's fires make her deduce that Finn is a water elemental, and that he isn't hurting her on purpose. She hugs him, which burns, and the two are separated once more. Finn wants to confess his new crush to the Flame Princess in spite of the fact that all he's done is be hurt by her thus far, but it's not as though this is especially unusual behavior from him. He is currently in the middle of recovering from the heartbreak of having realized his relationship with Princess Bubblegum will never go anywhere, so it's not as though a little bit of emotional pain is something that will make a relationship fail, that's just the cost of being close to another person. Finn tries to convey this idea to the Flame Princess, but mostly he ends up hurting her when he tries to extinguish the fire she started throughout Ooh. His attempts to get closer only result in pain, and this is something that the Flame Princess treats as a negative, as to her, there's no positive association thus far. This is the initial difference between the two. Finn is willing to put up with a little bit of pain to get something nicer, while the Flame Princess only sees the pain without the feeling of love that comes towards the end. It isn't until seeing the source of this pain, Finn's tears, that she starts to realize that it isn't something he is consciously inflicting on her. Because it's one thing to hurt another person on purpose, but another to do so accidentally or because you can't help it. Seeing that Finn is crying means he's hurt just as much as she is when his tears extinguish her flames. And so the fact that he kept getting closer to her in spite of the pain rather than because of the pain is what caused her to feel that first bit of empathy, which is what gets her to realize the feelings, everyone's feelings, are mutual. 5 short Graybles. A being named Cuber introduces 5 Graybles with a central theme to all of them. The first story follows BMO as they bid farewell to Finn and Jake before pulling up a stool to the mirror. There, they talk to the reflection named Football and explain what it's like to be a real boy by mimicking various acts in front of the sink. Finn and Jake see this, confirming that BMO does weird stuff when they're not around, and to celebrate learning this, they high-five. This high-five is weak, though, so they begin a stronger high-five, escalating into further and further wind-ups before launching themselves through opposite catapults. Princess Bubblegum is in her lab putting a cow through a centrifuge to make cheese, chemically altering a head of lettuce, cursing a loaf of bread, and so on to produce the most perfect sandwich, which she gives to Cinnamon Bun. He shoves it into his stomach without tasting it before belching the remains of the sandwich into her face. The blue guy smells something weird in his lair, blaming Gunther and banishing him for the stench. But when the smell persists, he realizes it was his own armpits and orders his other Gunters to wash him. He then settles in with the returned Gunther, who starts farting on his armpits once more. The other thing is excited to show off her song, These Lumps, for a talent show. But another group performs this song before she can get to, and when Lumpy Space Princess takes the stage, she's booed for being a ripoff. In frustration, she throws a basketball into the audience, which bounces off someone's face and into the basket. Repeating this trick rewards LSP with a victory until Finn and Jake's high-five finally connects, and they win the talent show instead. Cuber then finishes the stories, asking the audience to pause their televisions to guess as to what the connecting theme of all the stories was. After a pause, he declares it was the 5 senses. BMO saw their reflection, Finn and Jake touched each other's hands, PB tasted a sandwich, the Ice King smelled his own armpits, and LSP tried to sing a song. Web Weirdos. Finn and Jake accidentally stunt their way into a giant spider's web, hoping to wait for Finn's fingernails to grow long enough to cut their way out. But before this happens, the spider couple responsible for the web comes by, Ed and Barb, and the two fight over the fact that Ed makes all the webs because he finds it gross when Barb spins anything. Their argument results in Barb running off, so Finn fake eats a bug to earn Ed's trust so he can give him some advice on how to win her back. Ed finds a flaming sword in the woods as a gift for Barb, but when he offers her this sword, she views it as a selfish gift that he bought for himself. They fight again, with Ed passive-aggressively freeing Finn and Jake from the web, though Barb starts to assault Ed, so Finn turns around to make things right. He is overpowered by the she-spider, but the fight stops when she grunts in pain and then gives birth to thousands of tiny spiders. Jake is confident that their relationship will survive now that they're parents, while Finn is freaked out by being covered in spiders. Ed's issues with Barb are mostly caused by his own doing. He complains that he's the only person working to get them any food, and yet, when she offers to lay a web to trap food herself, he complains that she does so in a gross way. He has the same gross method of laying webs, but he considers it alright, because he's doing it. Later on, he tries to find a gift for her to start mending their relationship, but is unable to come up with any examples of things she likes, ultimately finding a flaming sword he thinks she would enjoy. And while his explanation was that they could use it together, the fact that she didn't see it that way means it was a bad gift because it was not a thoughtful one. But Barb's not blameless here either. She insists on being given a chance to catch some food, but comes up short in being able to either wrap up a meal or spin a web of her own. And of course she could have accepted the gift for the thought behind it, instead of its functionality. The purpose was to open a dialogue about their relationship, and then she refused to do this. A good relationship is not one where each person contributes an equal amount. A good relationship ideally should feel like both people are doing less than half, as they do the stuff that comes easily, while only sharing the burdens. It's when the person who cooks dinner does not have to wash the dishes afterwards. So at the end of the episode, when both spiders claim that their relationship is saved because they have kids together, Jake's take on the situation is far less accurate than Finn's. This swarm of spiders is not making things better. Dream of Love. Finn and Jake head to Tree Trunks' house to get an apple pie, where they see her and Mr. Pig in the garden as he never left after the events of Apple Thief. Their conversation turns to Mr. Pig's feelings for her, and at Finn and Jake's behest, the two start dating formally. But this results in the new couple making constant public displays of affection, which starts to distract and bother the people of the Candy Kingdom who have to watch it all. So Finn and Jake tell them to hide their love. Though they do this in so many different places, it only makes more people upset. They try to convince Mr. Pig and Tree Trunks to keep their PDAs in the privacy of their own home, but as they're against unmarried couples sharing a roof and don't want to rush into a marriage, Finn and Jake have to physically separate the two, taking Tree Trunks to her house to bake more pies as Mr. Pig goes back to the bar where he used to eat criminals. But the couple breaks into a song, titled Dream of Love, that convinces Finn and Jake to let them go back to each other. Their public displays of affection still gross people out, but Finn and Jake are okay with it now. Love, like all things, is something best done in moderation. Everybody loves love, but they tend to take exception to people who are expressing more overt feelings in public, as that lack of self-control comes across as a lack of care for other people's enjoyment. Tree Trunks and Mr. Pig are getting way too involved with each other during Princess Bubblegum's science music thing, to the point of stealing attention away from her and interrupting everyone else's day. This lack of accommodation for others' space winds up escalating as all of their attempts to move their love aren't actually motivated by taking other people's feelings into account, but by them trying to find a place where they don't bother anyone, or rather, aren't around anyone who would be. But if all things are best done in moderation, that means that the moderation ought to be moderated as well. Because while the couple may be making other people uncomfortable, it's not actually something they do because they're malicious. They just really love each other more than they care about decency. The song they sing that gives this episode its name is proof enough to Finn and Jake that they'll still feel strongly about each other no matter how distant they are, and it's finally agreed that there's more harm in separating the couple than there is in some people having to see them. Because if their love is so disgusting to some people, then that's not really Tree Trunks or Mr. Pig's problem. Some may have the opinion that it shouldn't be done in front of others, but not everything can be about them. Return to the Nightosphere. Finn and Jake wake up in a pile of bananas inside of a jail cell, trying to piece together the story of how they ended up there. Jake's phone dies before he can watch a video he took of them entering a portal, but a prison guard there tells them they're inside the Nightosphere, then lets them go because his shift is over and no one's taking over. Jake observes the hellscape as they search for the teller, who can take them to Hunson Abadir, Marceline's father, and the leader of the Nightosphere, so they can ask why they were in jail. But all they get is an extraordinarily long line that, after waiting 666 hours, only takes them to another long line. A flying cloud comes in, zapping anybody who claims to have a question for Hunson Abadir until Finn and Jake decide to cut the lines to talk to him directly. He reacts by trying to zap them a few times, chasing Jake into a keyhole where he and Finn escape into another portal. As they're leaving, they hit Abadir on the head hard enough that Marceline pops out, declaring that they can never enter the Nightosphere again. Thinking their friend is in trouble, Finn and Jake vow to figure out what's going on. After taking a shower. Once clean, Jake looks through his charged phone for the full context, seeing that they were invited into the Nightosphere by Marceline for a jam session when her father came in, embarrassing her by offering her an amulet and the chance to take over his role as ruler of the Nightosphere. She rejected the offer, but when she puts on the amulet, it takes her over with dark energy, transforming her into the creature who they thought was Abadir last episode. They also learn the bananas they have been carrying around that keep warding off demons are basically a waste product. Finn and Jake don demon disguises so Marceline won't recognize them, and they enter the Nightosphere where they see her cursing the denizens. Unable to get closer due to the long line they can't cut in, Finn freestyles a political rap that causes the people to overthrow the government's rules and charge Marcy all at once. Finn uses this chance to take the amulet off of her, though they're still trapped as the demons are swarming Jake. So Finn dons the amulet to get evil powers he uses to free all his friends, though he transforms and starts to attack everything nearby. Hunson Abadir takes his amulet back, talking about how the stunt Finn pulled has earned his respect before getting yelled at for tricking his daughter into transforming like that. Finn and Jake spend one episode of this two-parter trying not only to leave the Nightosphere, but learning the context of why they were there in the first place. They spend the second episode trying to get back into the Nightosphere while learning why they weren't allowed back in. This confusion is revealed to be a feature of the Nightosphere. It runs on chaos and ambiguity. The people have to wait in lines to wait in other lines, and this bureaucracy is so entrenched into the land that its people enforce rules that hurt themselves even when there's no one around forcing them to. This is one aspect of apathy, that people are unwilling to make any significant changes to the world, even if these changes could be for the better, and they're so unwilling to change that they'll actually loop around to being very much in favor of reinforcing this society they hate so much, arguing that those in charge have good ideas because those ideas are all they know. Finn does a political rap that's able to motivate people to actually change something about the system, and while the angry mob that wound up attacking him and Jake was certainly not part of his plan, the fact was that the change was the point, a roll of the dice on what the new Nightosphere will look like. But as one would expect from a ruler who thrives on this chaos, Hunson Abadir actually embraces Finn's methods of revolution, the end result of which was even more chaos. He's able to keep ruling because going from one mess to another doesn't affect him all that much. But what does have an effect on his life is his daughter, who he wants the best for. The problem is that he struggles to define what the best is when it comes to Marceline. He gives her an amulet that will possess her with evil, making her more like him, but Marcy openly states that she does not want to be more like him. This situation is further complicated by the fact that Abadir says that he's proud of her even though she isn't interested in taking over the family's torment business. He just didn't think she knew that he was proud anyway. Their relationship is surprisingly wholesome in a totally surface-level way, where the wholesomeness starts to fade away as soon as you realize that Marceline's dad doesn't know nearly enough about his daughter for his feelings about her to matter all that much. The chaos of the Nightosphere takes visual inspiration from Hieronymus Bosch's works, including his most recognizable, The Garden of Earthly Delights. Adventure Time borrows heavily from art history and pop culture when making its setting, but it borrows from the real world when writing its characters. A soul-sucking demon in charge of the underworld is actually just a silly dad trying and failing to relate to his teenage daughter, while he pushes her towards the family business when all she wants is to pursue her musical career. In Your Footsteps. While post-parachute partying with the Candy Kingdom, Finn is approached by a bear who starts choking on a peanut. Finn slaps his back with the Enchiridion, saving him from choking, and the bear is so grateful for Finn's heroic actions that he starts following him around. Back at the tree fort, the bear is imitating Finn's actions, which causes Jake to grow suspicious, especially when he sees the bear wearing Finn's clothes and practicing Finn's actions in the mirror. Jake tries to warn him about this behavior, but Finn finds it flattering. Later, when the bear starts eating Finn's Finn cakes from the fridge, Jake catches him on video to prove it wasn't him. But Finn doesn't care about this video because he's more concerned with why Jake watched him eat the cakes instead of doing anything about it. But then the two realize that the bear is missing, having gone to a party he hosted himself, and Finn finally starts to worry the bear really is trying to take over his life. His suspicions confirmed when he sees the bear dancing with Princess Bubblegum. Finn rips off the bear's Finn mask and reveals that he is just a bear, but everyone already knew that. Finn catches up to this bear, pouting in the woods and saying he just wanted to be a hero too. So Finn gives the bear the Enchiridion, saying it will teach him all he has to know, and then the bear takes this book back to a cave, where the possessed snail containing the Lich takes it from him. Imitation is the most sincere form of flattery until it is not. It's one thing to mimic the actions and speech patterns and dress of another person, but another entirely to mimic the motivations and ideals of that person. Not that this was what was expected of the bear during this episode. As it's pointed out a few different times, he is just a bear trying to be more like a guy who smacked him with the book. There's no reason to look into it any deeper than that. But in this episode, they do look deeper than that. The bear is assumed to be trying to frame Jake for crimes or take over Finn's life by replacing him entirely. And for 90% of the episode, this is an exaggeration of events that causes the main characters to scare themselves, assigning intentions to actions that aren't there. Ironically, this mistrust would have served them better had it been directed in the right place. It wasn't Finn's life he was after, but the book on how to live that life that he wanted to take. And while it might seem as though a bit of extra paranoia would have saved the day, the truth is that paranoia is a pretty worthless thing to feel, since there's just as much a chance you end up wasting your time by mistrusting people improperly, accusing them of doing something they're not, instead of something they're actually guilty of. This makes a lose-lose situation where not only do you end up pushing away people you should have trusted, but you still get taken advantage of those who wish you harm. Hug Wolf. Finn and Jake are preparing to burn the Tree of Blight when a wolf with hearts for hands jumps out of the trees and begins to hug Finn. Jake finishes burning the tree, and the wolf gets burned by one of the cinders, fleeing into the woods. Finn then spends the next evening trying to hug everything, and the next morning he is approached by Cinnamon Bun, who says that Finn spent all night hugging him until it hurt. Finn tries dismissing this as another of CB's stories, but Jake looks up the symptoms and deduces that Finn has been hugged by a hug wolf. In spite of Jake's attempts to cool him off, Finn goes on a hugging spree the next night, and when he comes to the next morning, he voluntarily lets the Candy Kingdom arrest him, so he will hug no more. Jake leads the rest of the Candy people on a crusade to defeat the Alpha Hug Wolf, only to be joined by a shifted Finn, who broke out of jail by offering Cinnamon Bun more hugs, and he begins to hug this wolf aggressively. The two hug each other out, exploding into a hug shroom cloud before waking up in their normal forms, Finn as a human and the other wolf as a lady. Jake asks the lady for a hug, and she transforms into the Tree of Blight. I could make a point in this episode about the way in which the hug wolf plague is spread in a similar way to an STD, and the fact that considering this makes censoring the word hug from this episode's audio track darkly funny as a result, but frankly that's probably reading too far into it. At least there's no need to look into werewolves and their derivative stories as any more than an allegory for what they were originally meant to be, with a bit of leeway for adaptation meant for children. That's what a werewolf story really is. The horror comes from the fact that you don't know who you can trust. And this isn't just a fear for the people who risk being victimized by a hug wolf or whatever, but the tragedy that the person transforming ought to feel as well. Finn spends a while in denial about him transforming into a hug wolf and attacking people overnight, assuming that he can get over it with a bit of help from his closest friends. But the real fear is that if you lose control over who you are for a time, will people still like the real you? Is the werewolf the real you at a certain point? This can serve as a metaphor for anything from a chronic illness, or a mental disorder, or even just a really stressful home life that sometimes causes you to snap at people nearby. Finn fears not just that he may end up hugging someone so intensely they get hurt, but that when he reverts to his human form, they'll still hold a grudge against him. So the human Finn volunteers to arrest himself for crimes another version of himself has committed. The tragedy of a werewolf story is that it doesn't matter whether the wolf in you is the bad guy or not, both of you end up suffering. Princess Monster Wife. Various princesses across the kingdom of Oo wake up to find that parts of them are missing, and this sight grosses out Finn and Jake, who agree to investigate the missing limbs. They start by interrogating Ice King, who insists he's innocent for a while before unveiling his new princess, Princess Monster Wife, who's made of all the missing bodies. The sight of her causes Finn and Jake to pass out in disgust, but Ice King insists they're just sleepy and begins living a normal domestic life with his new Princess Monster Wife. But Princess Monster Wife is concerned about her appearance, so Ice King gives her a cloak and puts on a fashion show for her that makes a Gunter vomit. Princess Monster Wife locks herself in her room, saying she's hideous, but Ice King reassures her that he loves her even without her monster parts. Finn and Jake arrive blindfolded, feeling around to beat up Ice King as Princess Monster Wife flies out the window, returning all the body parts to the princesses. Upon returning as a cloak and the idea of a wife, Ice King is furious that she gave away all his stuff. Ice King has spent so many episodes before trying to kidnap a princess while not being especially picky about who he actually ends up with. Here he tries to have not one princess, but all of them, and yet still not quite taking any individual one. Obviously, his logic is flawed, as Finn and Jake find taking pieces of a princess to be far more disturbing than having kidnapped a whole woman. But as Ice King is infatuated with his Princess Monster Wife, which is a fun thing to say, it's clear that his logic and actual logic don't really line up. One might then get the impression that while Ice King wants a princess, his actual desire is more about the idea of a princess than any particular woman, something backed up by previous seasons showing that he considers a lost love of his to be the princess that he seeks. And yet he ends the episode with a cloak and the idea of a princess. No tangible parts, but still able to communicate. And he hates it, clearly wanting his stuff over anything else. So it's not the idea of a princess that he wants, but the idea of ownership of a princess. He wants the control, and it doesn't really matter who or what it is. Goliad. Following her brush with death while fighting the Lich, Princess Bubblegum starts to fear for her mortality. So she creates an immortal successor to lead the Candy Kingdom should she be unable to rule, that she names Goliad. As Princess Bubblegum is too sleepy to teach Goliad how to be a leader, Finn and Jake agree to teach her about leadership by taking her to a local preschool for practice. But Jake yells at the preschoolers when they try to crawl inside his brain, and Goliad learns you can get your way by yelling, which she shows to Finn on an obstacle course. Finn says she ought to use her brain instead, which Goliad does by moving people with her mind. Finn and Jake try to warn Princess Bubblegum about the danger, so the princess asks them to distract Goliad while she creates a second Sphinx to stop the first one. Jake tries to stop Goliad, but she mind controls a bunch of candy creatures into his mouth to slow him down. She then tries to read Finn's mind to find out the plan, though Finn distracts her by imagining the Buff Baby song until Princess Bubblegum arrives with Stormo. Stormo engages in psychic combat with Goliad, and, as the two are perfectly evenly matched, they end up in a permanent stalemate. Princess Bubblegum explains to Finn that she created Stormo using a hair from his head, and Finn tells his son happy birthday. Princess Bubblegum's always been shown to be the type to play with life and death, the very first proper episode even showing her reviving citizens of the Candy Kingdom. And yet, in spite of the fact that she too is made of candy, she concerns herself with mortality because she cannot yet undo death itself. And we know this is a valid concern because not only have we seen her nearly die before, but we've seen her struggle with immortality as well. So rather than trying to extend her life, she tries to extend her ideas, making a new ruler who can carry on the way she would have should the worst happen. But as with Lemongrab before, her attempts to make a better ruler have only created disaster, as she makes a leader who rules not as a disinterested third party, but one who takes a forceful role in demanding those around her to do as she says. So she makes a second Sphinx to rule the first Sphinx, the two locked in perfectly even psychic combat where they remain for the rest of the show, a literal fight serving as a metaphorical one. So long as a force for bad is balanced by a force for good, the Candy Kingdom continues functioning normally. And that force for good is someone who takes after Finn to the point of having it in his DNA. And while the force for evil is one who's modeled after Princess Bubblegum, Goliad never really acted evil until being corrupted by Jake's outburst. We know Jake's not a bad guy, and we don't blame him for getting mad at children literally crawling inside his head, but for a being like Goliad, with limited life experience, seeing a temporary burst of anger is all the universe was at that point. Beyond this earthly realm. Finn and Jake are spelunking in a mystery cave when Finn comes across a lamb idol he wants for his bathroom. But when he touches it, he disappears, with Finn's face appearing on the lamb. Jake takes this idol home to come up with a way to free Finn from it by playing his favorite songs and favorite games. But in truth, Finn is trapped in the spirit realm, where no one else can see, hear, or touch him, except for Ice King, who can see Finn with his wizard eyes. He promises to free Finn from the spirit realm if he first purges the Ice King's castle of all the spirits wandering about. Finn does this only to overhear the Ice King singing about the fact that he's the only one who can see Finn, and that Finn will have to be his friend now. Finn threatens to free all the gross spirits, so Ice King agrees to hold up his end of the bargain by breaking the lamb idol Finn's trapped inside of. But when he arrives at the tree fort to smash it, Jake fights him off, and the Ice King is so ashamed of his body, he trips and falls on the lamb, trapping both of them in the idol. But when the Ice King is freaking out over the spirits touching him, Finn notices he can influence TV static, and the two get the idea to combine their powers to subtly blow over the lamb, breaking it and freeing them both. Adventure Time is the type of show that can simultaneously have wacky, lighthearted humor like Jake embarrassing Finn by unknowingly showing all the weird spirits a kid song he thinks Finn still likes, while also having those weird spirits exist. These are far from the character designs one would normally expect to see in anything less horrifying than a Renaissance artist's depiction of hell, and yet they can be played off as an elaborate series of sight gags as long as the episode still tonally remains consistent. And this isn't a huge leap for the setting to take either. We've seen the Ice King's wizard eyes in seasons past, and it was played as a joke there too. You can introduce just about anything to a setting as long as you pull off the first impressions correctly. Then, the series can evolve the concept naturally from there. Gotcha. Lumpy Space Princess, still living in the woods, is bragging to Turtle Princess about all the various woodland creatures who are flirting with her, and Turtle Princess asks if she can write a book about showing off lumps to guys that will help with her romantic struggles. LSP goes to Finn and Jake's tree fort to start researching for her book by pretending she's going to be their adventuring secretary, until she actually has to go on an adventure where she chases after her garbage clothes and gets trapped inside of a cursed mirror. She hallucinates several cursed Finns until the real Finn breaks her out of the mirror prison, explaining that it shows weird things to anyone who looks inside. She says she had to look inside at herself because she looked good, but when Finn says that she looks good on the inside, LSP starts to doubt herself, eventually writing in her book about how great Finn is and a person's inner lumps. She delivers this book to Turtle Princess, who loves it, and then Jake tells off Lumpy Space Princess for wearing garbage before she dramatically flies out the window. LSP learns a generic lesson about inner beauty explained to her as inner lumps that is already known to everyone else but her. When the Turtle Princess learns about this, she is not shocked or disappointed as LSP thought she would be, but has gotten exactly what she was looking for. Finn is even able to explain this concept to her as an offhand comment, not even realizing it's a lesson or anything. It's common that TV shows for the same demographics told over the same time period over and over would eventually run out of lessons to teach, and the umpteenth time that a character waxes philosophical about inner beauty or whatever in a specific media landscape, even the kids watching at home are going to roll their eyes and wonder why these guys haven't gotten the memo yet. So instead, the moral of this episode is a given that we as an audience can find humor in. The fact that Lumpy Space Princess seems to be the only one who doesn't already know what we do is the joke. Amplified by how loudly and repeatedly she claims that she is the expert in the field. Princess Cookie. The Candy Kingdom is in a hostage situation as a cookie named Snaps is demanding Princess Bubblegum's crown in exchange for the hostages he's taken. Princess Bubblegum is not planning on giving up her crown, so she sends Finn and Jake in to deal with the cookie. Jake at first saying he wants to disguise as a mailman to sneak in, before PB says he would be better off as a milkman. Finn disguises as Jake's shadow, and the two enter, with Finn taking out Snap's chocolate chips as Jake keeps him busy with conversation. While talking to him, Jake learns that Snap used to be an orphan before Princess Bubblegum inspired him to be anything he wanted to be, and he chose a princess, which PB shot down. Jake then decides that he's going to work with Snaps to help him live out his dream of becoming a princess, because he wanted to be a mailman himself, and the two work out a deal to get Snaps a horse to leave on, so he can begin his own kingdom. But the horse she provides is a banana guard inside the suit from The Eyes, and Jake realizes that PB plans on throwing Snaps, Princess Cookie, into the dungeon. So Jake carries him away, tossing off Finn when Finn sides with PB over the duo before they come to a dead end. Princess Cookie asks Jake to surrender, throwing himself off a cliff to evade capture, but surviving because he's a cookie. Later, in a hospital/mental ward, Jake the mailman delivers a crown from the Grass Kingdom to Princess Cookie, and the other patients bow to him. It's common to tell people that they can be anything they want to in the future, but this isn't an especially accurate lesson to teach. For one, baby Snaps is told this and decides to become a princess like his hero Princess Bubblegum. This is impossible, as there can only be one princess of the Candy Kingdom at a time, and there's an entire line of succession that has to be considered, not to mention the last time PB tried to find a replacement that ended in a psychic battle, still visible in the background. So there are a few logistical reasons why Snaps couldn't become a princess. I don't know that gender factors into it in this setting, because princess as a title certainly appears to have a totally different connotation than to our world. And this is why his dream will never come true. Of course, that's assuming that Snaps actually wanted to be a princess in the first place. It's more likely that his actual dream was just to be more like Princess Bubblegum, and the title was merely something associated with that. The dream of wearing a crown had far to do with the connotation than it did the crown itself. This is why Princess Cookie turned down an escape attempt with Jake as they were running from the banana guards. That isn't the type of thing that Princess Bubblegum would do. Or was it? Because they were running due to her threats of throwing him in a dungeon, not consistent with the behavior he wished to mimic in the first place. It isn't until the end of the episode, where he sees Jake as a mailman, he remembers both of their dreams. Then and only then is he able to accept the princess's crown, because only then did he remember why he wanted to be a princess. Card Wars. Jake is moping about a card game named Card Wars he doesn't have anybody to play with, as he keeps beating Princess Rainicorn, and BMO refuses to play with him anymore. So Finn sits through an hours-long explanation of the rules to begin a game where the loser must drink from a Dweeb cup full of random stuff. Jake immediately sets up a large combo involving corn warriors, but Finn dismantles it by summoning a pig to eat his fields, causing Jake to start losing once Finn has the hang of things. Jake starts destroying his own field and summoning stronger monsters as he demands Finn finish the game, and as Jake gets angrier and angrier, Finn decides to take a bathroom break. He sees BMO, who explains why they don't play with Jake anymore. Jake is a sore loser who will refuse to talk to Finn if he wins. So Finn pivots his strategy to losing on purpose without making it look like he's throwing the game, eventually losing when his pig refuses to leave Jake's mud fields. Jake wins the game and makes Finn drink from the Dweeb cup, which Finn pretends actually tastes good to trick Jake into drinking out of it too. The point of a game is to have fun, and sometimes having fun means taking things very seriously. After all, if not everyone is trying to win, then the point of the competition is moot, as both players are trying to accomplish different goals. Of course, the same thing can be said of a person who's trying desperately to win while the others are playing casually, focusing more on figuring out cool strategies than viable ones. So it's important to keep things balanced in a game, not only mechanically, but in how each player approaches it. Are they there to win, or have a good time? Can it only be a good time if they win? Jake pushes people away by throwing tantrums every time he loses, which causes people to stop wanting to play with them. And sure, getting upset at a loss just means the person was motivated to try to win, but there's a pretty decent line between keeping things interesting and making the other person's victory condition change from trying to win to trying not to anger the other player. Competition is good, but competitiveness is only fine in the context of the game. It ought to stop after the handshake. Sons of Mars. Magic Man is being pursued by Grob Gob Glob Grod, who wants to bring him to justice, when Magic Man sees Jake nearby and uses the last of his magic to swap places with him to trick the beings coming for him. G-Man, it's easier to say, takes Jake to Mars for a trial, and Finn demands that Magic Man transport him there to save his friend. But as Magic Man has limited magic left, he instead shows Finn a Martian teleportation device powered by thinking really hard about someone you care about. Finn winds up on Mars when Jake is currently on trial for a series of crudely depicted crimes that Magic Man did, which is why they originally banished him to Ooo to learn a lesson about caring for others. Abraham Lincoln, the King of Mars, forces Jake to choose between death or being turned into space dust, and he struggles to pick an option as he knows Finn would miss him either way. This revelation, that someone would miss Magic Man, comes too late, as Finn trying to stop the execution results in Jake being killed anyway. Abraham Lincoln, realizing that he made a mistake, meets with Death to save Jake's life, giving away his immortality in exchange and turning into a statue. G-Man decides not to return to Ooo as he's already lost one close friend today, and Finn and Jake return together. They punch Magic Man in the face before freeing his trapped tiny manticore, who shamefully refuses to thank them. Adventure Time is a show capable of introducing practically any lore it wants to simply by having the audacity to claim it's already the case. Because the early seasons relied so heavily on randomness for its humor, the more insane concepts are already out there, like, of course Abraham Lincoln is on Mars, we already knew that from the pilot. Magic Man has some otherworldly being trying to capture him, but sure, he's a jerk who has it coming, we don't question that. Because the show already has this wacky reputation, it can add new elements to the setting and have the developments be less insane than what was there before. So Abe's on Mars, but did you know he's also its king? Did you know Magic Man was sent to Ooo to learn compassion? And there are even hints here and there as to what exactly caused him to go so insane in the first place, between the title card depicting a woman falling off a cliff and the same woman being depicted on a photo that he mourns. While it's almost a certainty that at this point things like Margles hadn't been conceptualized, the fact that the character has been developed leaves the showrunners room to add crazier concepts, like a defense system named after a woman, to show because the audience is already so used to the escalation that we almost expect it. Burning Low. Finn finishes building a house for Flame Princess, her fire now hurting him far less than it used to, while him jumping into water to put out her flames doesn't hurt her as much either. Finn and Jake return home where they see Princess Bubblegum collecting taxes, but when she learns that Finn and Flame Princess have been dating for a while, she panics and runs back to her diary. The next day, she goes to the tree fort to explain some math to Jake, as Finn slips out to hang with Flame Princess some more. She asks Jake to explain what she explained to Finn, and he agrees, though Jake assumes what Peebles was actually explaining was that she was jealous of them. Peebles later sees Finn writing love letters to the Flame Princess, and Finn finally confesses that he had a crush on Peebles for years that she never reciprocated. But as she explains to Jake later, she wasn't trying to stop Finn from spending time with Flame Princess out of jealousy, but because the princess is unstable, which is why she was imprisoned in the first place, and if she is kissed, she'll melt into the core of the planet. Peebles and Jake rush over to stop them from smooching but are too late, and Flame Princess begins burning into the planet's core. Finn dives in after her, with Jake plugging the melted hole with his body, and Peebles tells him to hold that position because it will cause the flames to burn out all the oxygen, suffocating her and Finn. Though Finn's able to resuscitate Flame Princess with another kiss long enough for them both to survive being lifted out of the pit, where the two decide to kiss indirectly with a rock instead. It is easy at first to make the same mistake that Finn and Jake made in regards to Princess Bubblegum's intentions during this episode, seeing her reaction to Finn dating Flame Princess as jealousy that she missed out on an opportunity. Her attempts to stop them from going past the first tier being far more personal than simply trying to stop a planet from melting. But some of the foreshadowed history between her and Marceline that gets confirmed later makes any feelings beyond pragmatism more apparent. Yes, the read on PB being jealous of Finn was correct, but not because she was jealous of the Flame Princess, but of Finn himself. She's messed up a relationship before by being unable to support her girlfriend in a time where she needed her, and here she sees Finn in a very similar position where he can't be close to Flame Princess without literally hurting himself. And then he burns himself anyway, allowing his love of her to overcome the obstacle that reminds PB of an obstacle she once ran from. But intentions aside, what Princess Bubblegum really did to Finn was break his heart, though she never tried to. It's possible for a romantic situation such as this to have no bad guys. PB always viewed Finn as a younger brother due to the age difference between them, and this even contributes to her actions here, seeing someone she cares about hurting themselves in a relationship doomed to future harm, and then knowing it will end badly because of her personal experience. It might be satisfying to see Jake yell at her on a first watch through, but looking back, you wish he had understood the point in more ways than one. BMO Noire. Finn cannot find his sock and he asks Jake to help him look for it, but Jake is no help. After they leave, BMO decides to investigate the case of Finn's missing sock themselves by first grabbing a mouse named Ronnie who was nearby. By bringing up the name Lorraine, BMO's able to get a lead to check the pantry, where they become trapped, only to be rescued by Officer Davis, a cat, who says to stay out of the investigation. BMO goes to Lorraine and asks about the sock, with Lorraine accidentally revealing more knowledge of the case than she ought to know before directing BMO to Bebe, a remote control. BMO interrogates the remote for a while, but when they leave to clean up, they find that the remote is dead, and BMO stumbles down the tree fort's ladder. They're woken up by Nepter, who reveals that a sock's worth of treasure is missing, and BMO realizes Ronnie used the sock to carry the loot away. But the police have already found Ronnie dead, saying that he killed Bebe for the money. BMO's not so sure the case is solved, and finds Lorraine sailing away with the goods, claiming the sock is hidden in their old, secret, grown-up kissing spot, Finn's pillow. Finn and Jake return home where BMO proudly shows off the missing sock, as Jake learns that their chicken was named Lorraine. BMO has a rich inner life consisting of playing imagination with the various creatures around the tree fort that even Finn and Jake don't see much excitement in. And while from a certain perspective this could be considered sad, like a dog with no toys playing with garbage, it takes on a lighter tone given the context of the show it's a part of. Adventure Time's a very imaginative show. Had it been more down-to-earth, then perhaps one could take a negative reading of BMO's actions here, but the more positive outlook of the characters is infectious to the audience, so a noir adventure to locate a missing sock borrows none of the connotations of the genre it's a pastiche of, and instead is exactly what it appears to the cast themselves, a silly adventure with a lot of imagination driving the narrative. Because ordinarily, noir narratives are meant to be dark, not just literally, but in their tone as well. We expect certain tropes to appear when a detective starts following the trail of a mystery while depicted in black and white. And these are narrative tropes that we expect even when the audience isn't directly familiar with film noir in the first place. Certain aspects of these tales have managed to seep through the cultural consciousness to the point that we recognize them by piecing together bits of these aspects through parody and deconstruction, like recognizing the shape of something after having only seen its shadow. So BMO can do a faux noir pastiche that comes across as wholesome as the rest of the show, and this doesn't get questioned by the audience because nothing else about Adventure Time has really been totally inconsistent before. King Worm. Finn has dreams about being the king of the Candy Kingdom and going on dates with the Flame Princess. But he also hallucinates a worm and Peppermint Butler telling him to kill this worm, making Finn realize he's somehow trapped. Finn sees Jake struggling to follow instructions on how to wrap a present from an English-speaking Lady Rainicorn, and the two realize their dreams are connected. Jake teaches Finn that he can control himself in his dreams to have reality-bending powers, and the two go after the worm. They're chased by a Gunter monster after the Ice King, before coming across their father Joshua, who crochets a giant worm they pursue with big legs and birds. Finn corners the worm on top of a mountain and smashes it, waking back up in the tree fort, although there are still a few things off about the universe. Realizing this is still a dream, Finn remembers Jake's advice from before about bad thoughts warding off dreams, and he begins to focus on all of his fears: the ocean, the Lich, Princess Bubblegum telling him he's too young, and clowns. The king worm finally dries out from the negative energy, and Finn wakes up for real as the king worm leaves their treehouse. Devoid of context, this episode is bizarre, but with the context of the rest of the show and future episodes of this season, the plot's easier to follow. Not so much because the plot becomes clear, but the intention behind the episode is what the audience gets to understand. The most immediate connection is going to be the fact that this episode is a direct sequel to Evicted, where Finn and Jake finally return to their home after meeting Marceline, where they get brainwashed by a big worm. Then, to break out of this mind control, Finn has to face several of his greatest fears, all things we've seen before. This ranges from the ocean from Ocean of Fear, to the Lich from Mortal Folly, to Peebles' rejection from What Was Missing in several other episodes, to Shoko's early appearance being locked in the vault from the Creeps, and an appearance by the concept of clowns, which Finn announced he disliked back in Another Way. Once a viewer realizes how many throwbacks this episode has, they'll also understand how these fears get linked to later episodes from this season. Reign of Gunters in a few episodes first gets foreshadowed here, with Ice King running from them, and the Lich makes an appearance, as well as Farm Finn, who shows up at the season's very end. Normally, fear is considered a negative emotion, but it winds up being the connecting thread through this whole episode, and the fact that it's Finn's various phobias that wind up saving the day shows us that just because we're afraid of something doesn't mean we ought to avoid it. Lady and Peebles. Princess Bubblegum meets with Lady Rainicorn outside of a black ice cave where Finn and Jake have been held for weeks after fighting the Ice King. Lady expresses concerns over their rescue mission and the fact that the last conversation she had with Jake was complaining his noodles were too tough, but PB reassures her it will be fine as they have science on their side. They fly through this cave, navigating through rooms of creeping hands, giant tongues, and a bunch of eyeball lasers that steal PB's science stuff and knock Lady unconscious. Princess Bubblegum eventually finds Finn and Jake having been poisoned by Xanoids, and she meets the only other person who knows so much about these, Ricardio. Ricardio has built a body for himself out of muscles from Ice King's body, claiming that he's a man now, and PB ought to fall in love with him. Ricardio asks to marry her, and she agrees, on the condition that he beat her in hand-to-hand combat first. PB is able to win by using her knowledge of how to assemble and disassemble a body, kicking Ricardio with his own legs, before dragging Lady and the others back to the Candy Kingdom. As they're recovering in a hospital, Lady's happy to see Jake again, so she can confess that she's pregnant. It's a clever bit of dual foreshadowing in this episode that Princess Bubblegum's heartbeat detector gets used, not only suddenly revealing the multiple heartbeats following them as Lady's unborn children, but the fact that the real antagonist of the episode was not Ice King as they assumed, but a walking heartbeat Ricardio. It's mentioned early in this episode that Ice King is not so much of a threat anymore, serving as what's basically a background villain or red herring suspect, and so a real, more horrifying villain ought to take his place. This is done by recontextualizing a villain from the first season, Ricardio, whose antics were, at first, just something that Finn was jealous of, but now more horrifying by exploring the actual ramification of the first appearance. He is a walking, talking heart, and he was literally removed from the Ice King's chest and replaced later. Grotesque limbs are merely an escalation of his first appearance's motivations. I always keep coming back to the point that Adventure Time is a series that grew up alongside the audience, and this episode is an example of how it does that. Steadily introduce more mature concepts like Jake and Lady's relationship actually leading to fatherhood for the man, then take the earlier childish concepts and re-examine what those really meant. Not so much by explaining what the initial interpretation was wrong, merely that it never went far enough, for example showing how a sentient heart who wants to repurpose people's organs is actually a pretty terrifying concept. You made me. Finn and Jake are leaving the Candy Kingdom after helping to test Princess Bubblegum's aura visualizer when they see two banana guards watching security footage. These guards point out that the Earl of Lemongrab has been watching various members of the Candy Kingdom while they sleep, so Peebee confronts him, where Lemongrab runs away screaming because Peebee made him the way he is. She reluctantly decides to send some citizens of the Candy Kingdom, the Pup Gang, 3 delinquent children, volunteering in exchange for amnesty. But upon arriving at the castle of Lemongrab, the Earl of Lemongrab considers the pups as unacceptable, and he blasts them with his sound sword before taking them to a reconditioning chamber where they become electrocuted. The next night, the Earl of Lemongrab continues stalking around the Candy Kingdom, so Peebee tries to recondition him by teaching him how to be gentle with the candy people. He refuses and runs off with Finn, Jake, and Peebee following him. But Finn and Jake are trapped inside the reconditioning chamber to watch as Lemongrab threatens Peebee with his sound sword. Finn breaks the chamber and takes the sound blast for her before Princess Bubblegum's able to reveal she made a clone of the Earl of Lemongrab so they can rule each other. After mellowing out, the 2 Lemongrabs bid the others goodbye. Finn and Jake spend this episode trying to convince Princess Bubblegum to just get rid of Lemongrab through use of force, but Peebee rejects these violent attempts at eliminating the problem because to her, she is looking at a reflection and a challenge of her own philosophy towards leadership. Lemongrab is a bad earl and a bad guy who stalks her kingdom's people, and yet she was the one who established the security systems in place that allowed her to discover this. Had Peebee used his creepy behavior as justification for just smashing the guy's face or something, then she would have also had to examine her own behavior because it's no different. We see this reflected later in the way in which she tries to recondition the Earl of Lemongrab, not by putting him in a tiny room and electrocuting him, his method, but by taking him to the garden to learn to care for candy people in a peaceful, kind way. But this kindness does not work, making it appear as though her only option left is the violent methods others have been calling for from the beginning. But Peebee does not accept this as an answer because it would once again be an admission of failure, to say that she messed up in his creation and didn't try to improve things before giving up on them. The Earl of Lemongrab did the same thing with the Pup Gang, trying to electrocute them into compliance and giving up when that didn't work to keep stalking people. The point of this episode is that Princess Bubblegum is supposed to be the better person. Stooping to the same methods as the bad guy, bad as in incompetent, will not accomplish this. Who would win? Finn and Jake are having some bro time together gliding over a cliff when they see the farm, a giant barn with human limbs, fighting against the Marauders and winning. A being named the Train tries to fight it after the rest are defeated, only to be crushed, dragging himself away to get new legs. Finn and Jake realize that if they defeat the farm, they'll become bro legends, or brojins, but they're not powerful enough to win yet. So the 2 of them begin to train together, only for Jake to spend more time maintaining his ranking in Compy's castle than practicing with Finn. So Finn takes the console and smashes it, which causes Jake to begin fighting him more seriously. Their fight devolves into biting and pantsing before they race back to the farm to fight him so the other one can't. But both of them are smashed and have animals dumped on them. Finn and Jake share a dream where the Dream Warrior teaches them about cheap cars, sweatpants, and golden apples before waking them up with the water hose. Now reinvigorated, Finn and Jake fight the farm together using cheap tricks like throwing mud in his eyes, pulling down his pants, and biting his butt. For their victory, Finn and Jake are celebrated by the Marauders and given Brogend medals. Finn and Jake take down the farm by using dirty fighting techniques and yet are rewarded by the Marauders anyway. This is because all fighting is dirty fighting, and since you're going to be fighting dirty anyway, you might as well commit to the techniques. But the only way that Finn and Jake learn to fight dirty in this episode is by arguing with one another. They start their training by trying out actual fighting styles, or what we have to assume are considered proper, and only when Finn breaks Jake's game console does the fighting become dirty, or rather, fighting because they actually want to hurt the other guy. It's discovering this reason to fight that's more important than how you're fighting. The 2 even begin the episode with this in mind as they train together so they can fight together. It's not until they forget this and then relearn it that the importance of the lesson becomes clear. Finn and Jake did not want to defeat the farm. They wanted to defeat the farm together. The whole purpose of their training was to fight him more effectively, and ironically, it wasn't until they stopped fighting for each other and started fighting against each other they actually began to properly prepare. The Dream Warrior teaches both of them lessons on fighting by showing them that they knew how to fight dirty all along, and in doing so, reminds them that they knew how to fight for each other all along. Because all fighting is dirty unless it's for a good reason, and getting closer to your bros is a great reason. Ignition Point. While playing with smells, Flame Princess starts lamenting that her scented candles were left behind in the Flame Kingdom and she cannot retrieve them without seeing her father again. So Finn and Jake volunteer to get the candles for her, though they overhear two conspirators discussing an assassination plot while in her bedroom. Finn and Jake sneak around the Flame Kingdom to find these conspirators, identifiable by their accent and untied shoe, only to get chased around by the chef when they mess up his blueberries. They disguise themselves as actors to evade him when Jake gets the very original idea to reenact the conspirators' plot on stage and to check the audience for guilty expressions. They begin discussing extinguishing the Flame King with ice when the Flame King accuses them of disguising treason as a play. He orders his executioners to execute them when Finn sees one of their shoes is untied and the other has a distinctive accent. He then calls attention to this to the Flame King, who unmasks them to see they are his nephew seeking revenge for the assassination of their father. Hearing that the Flame King became king with fratricide, Finn asks if all the people are evil in the Flame Kingdom and if it's possible to turn an evil princess from evil to good with love. Finn and Jake return the scented candles, where the Flame King peeks out of the fires and begins whispering evil to his daughter. If you're familiar with the plot of Hamlet, then you'll understand Jake's plan during this episode as being derivative of that play. If you're familiar with the mechanics of tabletop role-playing games, then you'll understand Finn's concerns during this episode as being derivative of the implementation of morality in certain popular systems. Adventure Time is the sort of show where the Globe Theater and a table in some guy's basement can find common ground culturally, calling upon both aspects of society at once while not treating one as higher or lower than the other. The stories told on the grandest of stages are just as important to the audience as the things made up on the fly by a friend on a weekend night. No story is more or less important than anything else, at least not intrinsically. The only thing that matters is how much that story means to the person who's hearing it. So Flame Princess's grandma candles probably don't mean much to the average person, but they're valuable to her, and Finn's attempts to save the Flame King from an assassination attempt have only saved a person who's self-confessedly evil. But that's not important, because he stopped someone from being killed painfully. Sitting there and moralizing over whether it was the right thing to do is pointless because it felt like the right thing to do. Flame Princess is supposedly evil, but that doesn't mean Finn is going to let her dad die. And being supposedly evil won't prevent a good guy like Finn from trying to find the goodness in her. The Hard Easy. Finn and Jake are approached by a river scamp from the Wooby Woo village who tells them of a mega frog who's been harassing them. The Wooby Woo elder gives them a bag of lollipops as a gift for agreeing to defeat this frog, and Jake uses the candy to leave a trail so they don't get lost following the frog's footprints. But they run out of candy quickly and become lost, setting up a campfire by having Jake get struck by lightning. But when they see the frog in the distance, they put out the fire to attack, only to get beaten up by falling logs from a giant fake frog. Before they can come up with a plan to lure out the mega frog, it appears behind them by grabbing Finn. Jake fights it off and they retreat to a cave where the mega frog contorts to continue the pursuit. Finn is knocked out and Jake gets his face grabbed and bit, but then Finn remembers a few details of the mega frog, and he deduces it's a frog prince. Finn leaps off of Jake's head and kisses the mega frog, who undergoes a dramatic transformation sequence to become Prince Huge. Prince Huge thanks Finn for doing that, and then flies out of the cave. The Princess and the Frog is one of those Western fairy tales that most people are already familiar with, so this episode gives it that Adventure Time style by turning the frog into a monster and having it terrorize a bunch of fish dudes with semi-improvisational dialogue. The Frog Prince also has a series of traps and obstacles that Finn and Jake are unsure if he set up on purpose or by coincidence, and they spend most of the episode just trying to get through the bizarre parts of the world to find him at all. And yet, in spite of these obstacles being things that Finn and Jake have certainly overcome in the past, their eventual meeting with this giant frog sees Jake nearly getting eaten, at least until Finn starts piecing together random sentences with no correlation aside from the answer. It's pretty lazy, if not outright nonsensical foreshadowing for the eventual twist, but it's foreshadowing Adventure Time style, like all the rest of the plot beats thus far. This is why Finn is able to solve the mystery in the end to recognize this story for the fairy tale that it was, because he is used to this sort of, for lack of a better term, nonsense, and he can navigate random plots with ease. Reign of Gunters. Ice King is searching for his demonic wishing eye, while Gunter is desperate for attention, with Ice King grounding him to the corner while he flies to Wizard City to get a new one. While in Wizard City, Ice King starts to talk with the Huntress Wizard about how esoteric everything there is before he enters a magic item store where he overhears part of a secret wizard conversation, and then the secret wizards attack him. Meanwhile, Gunter has taken the demonic wishing eye and the kitten from Chamber of Frozen Blades out from a hiding spot, creating hundreds of clones of himself and attacking Finn and Jake's tree fort. They soon learn that nearly all of Ooo has fallen to the Gunter invasion, and they head to the Candy Kingdom next. Finn tries to help out Princess Bubblegum with a plan, though he does not tell her this plan at the advice of a self-help book Jake keeps around as a joke. The Gunters defeat the Banana Guard before storming the walls of the Candy Kingdom, where Finn does his plan, giving them every glass bottle they want to smash. But Gunter smashes every one of these bottles, so Princess Bubblegum offers to have them reassemble them to be smashed again forever. Unsatisfied with this offer, the Gunters threaten to smash the Gumball Guardians before Ice King returns from his wizard battle to defeat Gunter with a spray bottle. He's about to tell them how he survived the battle before remembering it's wizards only, fools. Gunter is acting up throughout this episode, with Ice King being the only person capable of controlling him, ironic given that Ice King is depicted through the rest of the episode as being the least capable of doing anything else. He spends the episode complaining about all the other wizards keeping secrets from him while getting ignored or spoken down to, and then he arrives at the very end of the episode, unable to explain how he survived the encounter, but able to effortlessly dispose of a threat that felled the greatest minds and armies of the Candy Kingdom. It's reasonable at this point to assume this was something done as a gag, that Finn and Jake and Princess Bubblegum struggled against the silly penguin who follows around a joke villain, as he was actually the most evil creature on the planet, something Hunson Abadir, probably another contender for this role, has hinted at before. The name Orgalorg has probably not been considered at the moment this episode was made, as Adventure Time is a show that benefits from being spontaneous, both in the episode-by-episode plots and the grand scheme of things. So using Occam's razor to determine just how serious we are supposed to take these character moments is the best option currently available. Also, I'm not really sure if it's Gunter or Gunther or Gunther. The characters seem to alternate between them pretty arbitrarily. I Remember You. Ice King is performing Marceline's Fry song to Gunter when he concludes that a cool ballad about a sad backstory will make him more popular with women. So he flies to Marceline's house to ask her for advice on how to write better lyrics, bringing over some instruments and some random scraps of paper he's brainstormed on. Finn and Jake come over to try to fight off the Ice King, but Marceline says she's okay with them staying, and she sends the two away so IK and Marcy can have a jam session. Ice King begins blasting her ceiling with ice while singing about how he wishes he were more likable before getting into a scuffle with Marceline. He hides atop the fridge while Marceline begins her version of the songs about how she doesn't hate the Ice King and just wishes he remembered the way she did about their past. Marceline takes some of the scraps he's used as lyric sheets to show him a bit about his history, using his own lyrics about the way that he loves Marceline and wants to protect her, but the crown he's wearing is making him lose his mind, eventually apologizing for whoever he is about to become. Ice King sings these old lyrics despite not remembering that he was the one who wrote them, as Finn and Jake watch on in confusion. The episode ends on a shot following the Mushroom Wars, where a crying Marceline is given her stuffed animal Hambo by a pre-transformation Simon. Ice King's crown is frequently served as a metaphor for dementia, where an older mind begins to degrade without the person it belongs to realizing it. Ice King forgets faces or their significance, and he forgets about those closest to him as they start to become strangers once more. But the people he's forgetting don't forget about him, leaving them with memories of a person who's not quite dead, but might as well be. The fact that Ice King is still around means that Simon doesn't get to rest in peace, so all of those who knew him before have to see what he's become, rather than remembering him at his best. It's less like Simon Petrikov is alive and more like Simon's body is alive while his mind is not. The exact details of precisely how his crown works and what it really does to him don't get revealed until later in the show, but the logistics matter in this plotline far less than the impact it has on those closest to him. An actually explanation given to Marceline will not make her songs any different. This season began with a story of unrequited love, and it's ending the same way. Finn and Flame Princess have a tragic history of a princess locked away by her father for her own safety that ends with the two finding a comfortable spot for their love. Marceline and Simon have a tragic past of losing everything and then finding each other, giving each person the strength to keep surviving. One story is about a tragic past but an optimistic future, one about kindness in the past but no optimism for where it will go from here. The Lich. Finn has a nightmare featuring the cosmic owl, the bear from In Your Footsteps, and the lich-possessed snail killing Billy that concerns him enough to investigate if Billy is okay. He and Jake enter Billy's crack and ask him about the dream, to which Billy responds by recruiting the two and gathering crystals from each of the crowns of the princesses across U. After gathering these, they place the jewels inside of the Enchiridion, where it glows and a man with a book on his head explains time portals, an explanation Billy skips over to say he's going to push the Lich into a wormhole. The final jewel they need is from Princess Bubblegum, the theft of which results in a scuffle where Finn's cheek is cut by Peebles' scissors. As they're about to activate the Enchiridion and give it to Billy, Peebles warns them that Billy is the Lich, and the book starts transforming as the Lich beckons Finn closer. Finn tries to smash the book to prevent it from falling into the Lich's hands, but this causes a portal to open, with the Lich climbing inside. Jake grabs onto him with Finn helping him to be anchored, but they fall through anyway. The episode ends on a boy who resembles Finn next to a regular dog who resembles Jake as he practices the flute before his mother calls him inside for something urgent. This episode is less of a season finale and more of an arc finale, wrapping up concepts introduced between season 1 and now. It's not merely about finishing off the Lich and the consequences of his appearance, but about wrapping up some of Finn's story arc as well. In the first season, Finn looked up to Billy as he wanted to be a great hero the same way his idol was. The fact that the Lich possessed Billy and that Finn had to overcome him in this disguise is more than just the Lich trying to get revenge against an old adversary, but Finn having to overcome a new one as he has surpassed his old hero not so much in deed, but in mentality. He is tricked into helping the Lich out by piecing together a series of jewels from crowns that exist to weaken his power. The last time Finn fought him directly, he needed a jeweled headband to defend himself. And between this and the fact that Finn was stealing crown jewels from the princesses who he's been saving for so many seasons, rather than simply asking for them all at once, means that in a way, Finn failed to maintain that heroic attitude he had always wanted. He was so focused on saving the world, he forgot to save the people in it.